Shelter Insurance. The MFA Mutual Insurance Company began operations January 1st, 1946. The company's name was changed to Shelter Insurance in 1981. Shelter has been serving Marion County and the surrounding areas with a local agent since 1979. The Shelter Insurance Group of companies is a leader in the industry, providing customers with exceptional insurance and financial products and services. Since opening the doors in 1946, they have become one of the most successful and financially sound regional insurance groups in the county. Marion Pharmacy became a franchised Health Mart pharmacy in 1984. As a full-line pharmacy, we accept most all major insurance plans, including Medicare D plans for seniors. We have been offering flu shots for the past couple of years and will continue to do so in the future. They offer a full line of durable medical equipment for both rental and purchase. They also have a Kodak picture printing machine, a full line of Hallmark cards, giftware, and toys for tots. Prairieland Partners Incorporated is a John Deere agricultural equipment dealership specializing in large ag, turf, and integrated solution products. Prairieland has 9 stores in south central Kansas and more than 250 employees. Prairieland maintained a strong business position and has completed a total store remodel in its Winfield location. Continued growth, we will be adding Honda products to our offerings. Also, an expansion of the Marion location is planned.
Let's call a meeting to order. Let's stand and say the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have 5 persons present for council meeting tonight, so we do have a quorum. Let's look at our agenda. As you notice, you have a pink sheet. That means there's some changes been made, and 3 of them were mine, so I'll go ahead and tell you about those. On the consent agenda, I removed one item for further discussion, and that was the beer permit for the Chinga group. And so he added he put it down on number 9. And then I asked for some discussion for the alleys to be started, what plans have been made for fixing our alleys to be made, and that's number 10. And number, let's see, which was the other one I had suggested. Is that it? That's it.
The only other change would be I had added an executive session for non-elected personnel, the economic and tourism position, at 22.
Okay. Number 18. Do we have anybody that's going to be here from that, Mrs. Billings or anybody?
Up to the best of my knowledge now.
And you didn't find anything on the website that told anything about the resources, correct?
Well, I can tell you about that. If you approve the agenda, I can give you the full.
Okay, because you said you had some trouble getting into it, and I was just wondering if it was something we needed to.
We can discuss it. As long as it's on the agenda, we'll discuss that.
Okay. Any further additions or corrections to our agenda? Motion for approval?
Absolutely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jerry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5 to 1. Okay, the consent agenda items, is there any that you would like to have pull for further discussion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Second by Jerry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5 to 0. We do have someone present, I think, for the audit report. And you are Ms. Goldfish.
Jan Hildy.
Okay.
So Swindle, Jansen, Hawk, and Lloyd.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize or not apologize. we did not receive these until this today. And so I'm going to plead the Fifth Amendment as to whether I read the whole thing or not. Does that tell you anything? So I don't know whether the others have had any time to look through it, but that's going to be what we're going to have to tell you about our.
I imagine you're going to be going over most of it, right?
Yes, I'll go over the communication letter first,
Okay.
and that's the loose.
Would you wait 1 second? I've got
Okay.
to sign some documents.
Okay. I have some extra copies here. Can I, let me go ahead and I'll speak from one, and then I'll just go ahead in case you need some else.
Fireworks. So that means it's paid too.
The communication letter, which is the loose copy, I'll just go over that in a little bit more detail. The first few pages are just some required communication that we will give you every year. If we've had any difficulties to encounter during the audit, if there were any corrected or uncorrected misstatements, we would note those. Any disagreements with management, we would note those there. And so this letter is just telling you that we did not have any of those during your audit. And then at the bottom of page 2, we did communicate some positive aspects that we did note. We did appreciate all of the help that we received during our audit. And we just noted 3 items there. Records and transactions were well supported and documented. And so we just wanted to give you some items there of some positive nature before we did point out some items for improvement. And then at the bottom of page 3, under significant deficiencies, financial statement reporting, we just wanted the council to know that we do take the general ledger that the city prepares and not actual financial statements to prepare these financial statements. So we're just kind of letting you know that. And then in the middle of page 4, we're just giving some recommendations. Getting the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, which the city has already purchased. That was one of the recommendations. And then completing the checklist report for the financial statements, and that was also done. So that was accomplished too after the communication letter here. And we're just recommending to participate in some additional training for KMAG, financial statement preparation and review, and then adopting a policy. All of those things are recommendations just to help in the preparation of the financial statements, since those are not prepared in what the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide require. They are prepared how your accounting system prepares them, but not in the guidance that the guide requires. So those are our recommendations there. And then at the bottom of page 4 is other control deficiencies, fixed asset inventory. We just noted that the city does not currently perform any type of annual inventory procedures. And so on the next page is our recommendation. We think that's a higher risk area than some, and we think that's really important. So we're just recommending here, we bulleted what we think is important on a fixed asset inventory listing. And we had noted here why we think that's important to have that done. And it should be performed at least annually and run by the council, kept up to date. A threshold could be determined, and then those items over that threshold can be included on this fixed asset inventory. So just some recommendations here to include. You could physically tag equipment to make that on some of your office equipment, some of the items.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and stop you. I think Angela probably told you she is really, really working diligently to get all of that accomplished. And I'm afraid I encouraged that right from the start. So, yeah, and she's doing that, I know. So, working hard.
And the top of page 6 is the encumbrance and accounts payable reporting. And we had just noticed that the city does use the purchase order module, the same computer system that you use for your accounting records. And it does reflect, it doesn't correctly reflect in all cases in the correct period. So we're just recommending a journal entry be done for those accounts payable so those can be reflected in the correct period. So we're just making a recommendation there. And we do appreciate all the effort and time that the city employees helped us in doing our, that's under our summary there, because they were a lot of help to us, and that really did help for us to get in and out of here timely. They were a lot of help to us. Is there any questions or comments on the communication letter before I move into the financial statements?
I have some, but I would like to start over here. Eric, do you have any?
Just got 5 minutes ago.
Chris?
No,
Tom?
not right now.
Okay, I was just going to ask you about this policy for reviewing the financial statement. I suppose she told you we'd have a little bit of a way, but then I would like to for sure see that done as well. So hope you've given us good advice on that particular point as to how we might do that.
A policy for that. We've talked about it, whether it's
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
On some of these, now I have a question. On some of these recommendations, this will be starting my second year on the council. I don't remember seeing these in last year's. Is there some changes or just new eyes looking at our stuff and making recommendations? Is that most of where that's from? Because I don't remember some of these from last year.
possibly every audit firm does things, I'm sure, a little differently. So yes, probably that more than anything. There's certain things that we think is more important than others, and so we will note those in the communication letter. You know, things that we've run across over the years that we've been doing auditing, maybe problem areas that cities have had, and so that's kind of where our points come from. Maybe some issues or problem areas, and then we think, well, this would be a really good point that we think all cities should maybe have a certain
Policy or procedure.
yes, or fixed asset inventories, because there was an issue in one case, and so that's a lot of where those points come from. Or maybe some training that we've gone to, which new training that gives us ideas and it's more helpful. The financial statements, I'll just spend just a few minutes. I know you receive regular reports every month, and so this is just history. I know you've seen 2012 already, so this is just compiling it a little differently than what you're used to seeing. Starting on page 1 of the Independent Auditor's Report is page 1 and 2. And this does look, the financial statements, if you will compare these to last year's financial statements, they do look a little bit different. The Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide has changed the way that they are requiring presentation, and so we've incorporated those changes here. So it does look a little bit different, and all municipal audits across the state of Kansas have incorporated this if they're following the KMAG. And so they do look a little different. And one of the, on page 3, one of the things that we look really closely at is a cash basis violation. So if you look on page 3, the third column from the right is the ending unencumbered cash. And we want to make sure that there's no negatives in that column. And so you can see that there are none. So that's a real important. The city doesn't want to have any cash basis violations at the end of the year. And then starting on page 4 are the notes to the financial statements. And the Kansas Municipal Accounting and Audit Guide give us guidance as to what needs to be in the notes, and so that's what's included here. And under item 2 on page 5, the compliance with Kansas statutes, if there had been a cash basis violation or a budget violation or any other type of violation, that would be any other type of statutory violation, that would be noted here. And we did indicate that there were none noted in 2012. And there's just some general information that the guide requires. And then on page 8 is the long-term debt, changes in long-term liabilities is noted here. That's kind of interesting information. It does show your general obligation bonds and your KDOT revolving loan and your capital leases. That shows your 2012 activity, principal and interest payments, and then your balances at the end of 2012. And then the next page shows your 5-year payments for principal and interest, and then in 5-year increments after that. Kind of interesting information. The next few pages, there's just more information that's required by the guide. And then on page 12 is a summary of the expenditures actual compared to budget. In the far right-hand column shows the variance column, and if there had been any positive numbers in this column would show a budget violation. So it kind of summarizes the pages that follow. You can see there were none. The adjustment for qualifying budget credits, that's where the GO bonds, some of your bond proceeds, revolving loan proceeds, any bond type proceeds went into that column there. And then starting on page 13 is the general fund, and I won't go over every page unless you have a question on any of the funds specifically. This just goes over each of your funds and breaks them down by account line items. If you have any questions on any of those account line items or any of those funds, we can talk about those. Our hope was to get these out to you. They arrived Friday, but not in time apparently to get out in the council packets, so.
Ma'am, on total taxes, in that column, we went over 39,000 over that we wasn't prepared for. What does that mean?
Are you on page 13?
Yeah, 13.
Okay.
39,000. Negative the variance there on the.
It looks like you budgeted, yes, 890,000, and your actual was 851,000. So your revenues were down from budget. It looks like, well, neighborhood revitalization rebate made 28,000. Because that was not a budgeted in the budget column, so that made a good portion of that.
Okay.
So neighborhood revitalization rebate is handled a little differently. It can either be shown as a negative revenue, or it can be shown as an expense, which is never an expense, so that's kind of so the state of Kansas allows it to be shown either way. And so the city has chose to show it as a negative revenue because it is a rebate.
With that, is that something we should be budgeting for, or is that something that we don't know necessarily during the year what's going to be solid? So it's probably always good, if there is neighborhood revitalization rebates, it's probably always going to show up as a variance number.
And I don't know if you changed your budgeting procedures on how you do that, or continue not to budget
We
for
have
that
a
you
budget
can.
for it in the past.
Okay.
If you budget for it, then it affects your mill levy.
It does. The state of Kansas allows a couple different ways to do that, so, of course, we always recommend consistency is always probably the best practice, but, so.
We consistently don't budget it.
It's probably, at least you're consistent, your mill levy is consistent that way too, by not doing it the same way, but. Are there any other questions on the financial statements?
Looks to me like we did a pretty good job on the budget, I know. But you didn't find anything glaring in that department either, did you?
No, as we look for the budget violations, that's the most important thing, and there were none of those.
I'm sure you did any recommendations as to how we might improve some of that if we needed to get closer. That looked to me like it's, anybody else any further questions on any of that up until the special funds? 21, anybody do 21 yet? Ms. Lang,
Yes.
do you suppose if we had any of these questions on here that you could probably be answering any of those that's from here on out, and the rest of it is? Okay, did anyone else have any really general question to ask? If not, I would appreciate having you come again next year and do a good job finding if we need any help, and I'm going to be there to help us.
Thank you for letting me come today. We just recommend that the audit report be approved.
Yep, that's what we're going to do. If we have anybody else have any more questions for you, I'll let us go now. Okay, then we're to the action part of it. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the city audit for 2012 as presented by Swindle, Jansen, Honk, and Lloyd.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion to approve your report of the 2012 audit, and by Todd, and a second by Chris. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, also, probably in a separate motion, I would like to move that we consider the city staff acting on our recommendations.
That's what I would like to have that on our agenda next time, and maybe they can come up with some of their own recommendations as to how they're going to fulfill some of those, how they're going to do. To make up that policy is going to take a little time. Do you have any?
Well, I guess I would say that I don't think we have to wait for that. My motion would be that we follow the recommendations and have the staff report back at appropriate time with the policy and implementation structure of these recommendations. So that way they know we want to have this stuff done. So
Is there a second?
did you get that rough motion? Very clear and concise.
It's for you to get the work done if you haven't already done so. Which one of you?
I did.
Okay, seconded by Jerry Klein. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0 then. You want to read back your motion just in case you can get it down as right. We will have it cleared up next time.
We have to clean it up a little bit. The Heishman moved to follow the recommendation of the audit and have staff report back about the implementation of the policies.
Policies and recommendations in the letter. I'm not for sure what exactly. Communication letter, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't have to read that back before you took the vote.
That's all right. We'll muddle through it.
Okay, let's go on then now to Ted here yet?
I have not seen him. In his absence, if you would allow, Margot Yates would be able to present.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I called Chad and he's in Hutch at a meeting. He forgot about this, so that's okay. We can do this. The first one is for the CUP for the Public Library Edition. And the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council that you approve the CUP with the exception of the gravel parking lot. Zoning regs do not permit us to, gravel parking lots are not allowed. So rather than set a precedent, we chose to just simply say we approve, the plan as presented except for the parking lot. And we really would kind of like to suggest that you maybe think about helping them out and pave it. We didn't know if that's possible with doing 4th Street, but
It probably have to be a budgetary item, but then I think we probably have to think about that only.
we thought there might just be some extra material from 4th Street still running down there. And
You talk to that guy over there. Or her.
yeah.
If the parking lot is to be considered at a future date, and they do meet the current zoning regulations for a parking lot, do they need to come back to the Planning Commission to build a parking lot?
The way we took it was, you can approve the gravel parking lot. We choose not to, because then we'll have to explain to other people why we approved this one, but maybe not one in the future. So that's really.
And that's over on the east side, correct?
And we did want to suggest that 2 additional dusk to dawn lights be installed in the new parking lot for security purposes. And that was the only 2 suggestions, and otherwise we are very happy for them and glad that they're able to do this.
I'm sure you would rather have something other than a gravel.
They would have done it, but it's a money thing, so.
Margot, is the policy for gravel parking the same for municipally owned property as it is for private or commercial properties? There's no distinction for...
I looked in several different areas of the regulations to see if we could kind of go around it, and you can't.
I just wondered if it
Yeah,
was...
yeah, so
So
we
if
just...
somebody would get a tire injury at one of those rocks.
Well, I'll tell you, the point was brought up that your own city crews clearing snow are not going to have as easy of a time if it's gravel. They also pointed out that if someone's in a wheelchair, they're not going to have as easy a time if it's gravel.
There's some safety issues with that.
Is there a provision for gravel during construction so that the finished parking lot would not be damaged with construction vehicles during construction, but still having an area with the intent to do a final top?
No, there's nothing that I could find, that says...
Well, that would be the same as up there at the homestead, but
Correct.
we asked for just base and then...
But we'll have to, any type of hard surface you'll do will require some base work, larger rock, and then some AB3, and so I just don't know if there's a time feature, because if we are able to work something out, there will be a period in which that parking lot will be gravel,
Yes.
with the intention that it will be hard surface, and that would be sufficient.
Well, and I mean, we talked about putting it in our motion that eventually they would be required to do that, and we just really didn't want to create a hardship. So this is just the route we chose to take, was we approve everything, but we won't rubber stamp the parking lot because we can't. We don't have anything that says that we can approve that. And so we just kind of put that in your laps.
And I can see agreement right there. Thank you for your thing. So now let's have questions. Any more questions from the council here?
Yeah, I have one. Maybe 1 or 2. Is there no written report back from the planning commission to say this was what was requested, and then it's just your verbal?
Well, I mean,
Have we done
This
that?
chat
I mean,
It's in the
we're not
minutes.
looking at.
it's in the minutes, but
And we
I
didn't
wasn't
talk-
prepared to do this.
I know you weren't, so I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm just asking since you're the one that gets to be.
yeah, it's
Todd,
okay.
I think you've got a good point there. I think we should have Chad provide that to us.
Well, at least to know what the application was for and then their recommendations. So we
And
can
signed
look
by
at
him
it.
or somebody.
Yeah,
The
Just have
minutes
a written
the
document.
minutes could be presented, but they would be draft because they haven't been approved. They will be approved at the May 28th meeting.
But this would just be their recommendations to us, so in writing. if it could be.
just to whoever you, Marty, Chad, that it'd be nice to have that written back. Here's what was applied for, here's what we approved, here's what, or not approved, they can't approve anything, they recommend for our approval, and then what doesn't meet
Agreed
that.
on that?
If we can make that,
Agreed.
make that a policy change when you're changing your
Okay.
part of the regs, that you'll submit all this stuff in writing. It's just easier to follow.
Okay, we can do that.
You expect something in writing, we expect something. in
That's
writing.
fine, yeah, that's fine.
And it's easier to follow.
Mhm.
To just be the messenger.
That's fine, I can do that. Shall I go on to the recommendation for the zoning regulation changes for subdivision?
No,
No,
just take this one at a time.
Okay, and know if you were through with that.
Any more questions for the public library?
Well, I'd like to point out, though, that there are a number of parking lots around town that are gravel. For instance, the senior citizens, Lutheran Church, the church up on Coble. So there are quite a few gravel.
But we don't maintain some of those. But we will be maintaining this one.
But that's why I asked whether it applied to just the city or commercial or.
That's the only thing I'm thinking about. Isn't going to be city maintained because we're going to have the city guy out there cleaning it off probably.
And I would guess, when were these adopted, when were these guidelines?
The regs?
The regs adopted. Probably all that other stuff was done prior. They've been in place for.
They're probably grandfathered in. I appreciate that, Jerry. I remember you were at our meeting, and I don't know if you heard me say a couple times, I wish I could think of some other gravel parking lots in town, and I couldn't think of any, and nobody else was giving me any suggestions, so.
That's a good one.
The hospital parking lot's gravel too.
And that would cost me the grandfather in if it wasn't in the other rules.
Is that parking lot just gonna be straight east of that building?
Yes.
I didn't remember. So they'll have to come down that street, and then there's no street to it,
Alley.
or alley.
This is the new building.
See that ground down there? Top ground.
So it looks like their parking lot's gonna be close to the alley. And then the sidewalk go up to that building.
Right.
Not too many spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 12.
You don't have money for that either, do you?
Well, it's an additional cost that we were going to put to the building. You know, people have given donations and memorials, and I think you guys should have their money spent on the building, not the parking.
Exactly.
We have the county doesn't limit who can park on the north side there, so, I mean, you could get most of your folks on some type of paved parking without really needing, this could be your overflow and much closer, but you could get
It's
paved
needed,
parking.
it's
Yeah.
needed, but with the addition that it's,
You
there are
could get-
other sources.
Yeah, you'd have your other handicap spots where they already
Right.
are, and
Which would still
anybody
have
could
access.
access to the new addition.
Further questions?
Will that elevation be up quite a bit higher than that parking lot, or does that seem to me like that's all flat? See, I have a pet peeve against park building and then you're in the hole already. Build it up, you know, so you're out of the water.
I think they're gonna have to haul in some dirt first.
How much?
I have no idea.
For the building?
Yeah, so make sure it's way good, high enough to start with.
They have procured the efforts of the civil engineer, EBH Engineering. I'm sure a grading scale will be part of the overall site plan.
Further questions?
What about the lights? Is that part of, that was your recommendation? Theirs that have to do with the regs?
Now, see, they've got, this is the parking lot, this is the new building, these are lights, but I felt like maybe a couple more down here for security.
For security, but is that, I'm just clarifying, is that part of the regs?
That
or
is
you
a
could-
suggestion.
Just a suggestion, not, because I know in some regs that if you put in new parking, you do have to have X amount of lighting for the parking. but
If they're going to
not
have
all.
open house at night, that's for sure.
One light.
One night.
Spots right now.
There's one, it was only for half of that, right? You already had some lighting on part of that new parking.
Yeah, see,
I'm sorry.
That's
Should
all right.
looked-
Yeah,
They have
there's one
some
right there.
there, so you really just look at that.
I don't know if they thought here and then up by the building. I'm not sure where they said to.
But they're probably it.
There probably be lights on the building, so.
Over the door entry or something on there.
What's presently there from the north? What kind of lighting do they have to come into the building from the north if you have something at night?
There will be 2 lights on each side of the door.
And that provides light for the. Other questions?
That shows.
Oh, 4 lights, sorry.
Oh.
2 lights.
Looks like it's well lighted. Any action to be taken at this time then? Did you have a suggestion, motion? Approve the planning board's commission recommendations for the being made without the gravel. Get 2 lights.
Well, you can allow the exception.
We don't have to do that.
The point about, Madam Mayor, that we grant an exception and one project that I see coming up could be the rebuilding of the big school. And it will probably have to go through this process, I would guess, to build or not. Or would they be grandfathered in because that's not a paved
The parking is paved, but then not the road.
It's part of, but not all of it.
Part of the park.
The west side is.
Okay.
Or something.
That's right.
Do you follow what I said? Maybe that doesn't, maybe I'm thinking of something that wouldn't apply here, but that would, if they have to tear down and rebuild.
If the footprint's the same, I'm not sure they would have.
They would just need a building permit
Okay,
for
so
the
not
new
a
building.
conditional
But it
use.
doesn't go through planning, because it's not like a subdivision regulation that requires any additional approvals.
Okay, and this comes back to us because this is city property that's in there, any,
The zoning regulations specify a government building must have a conditional use permit.
so it could be possible that other structures are new that would fall under, potentially fall under that.
If you're concerned about precedent, you could also say for municipal projects, we do not require that same level. It's still a precedence, but how often does a municipality build brand new with parking lots? So
How many times do we, or they, or some subsidiary of the
Correct.
city do that? Well, Madam Mayor, I move to approve the conditional use permit and grant and approve the gravel parking lot as they requested.
lighting.
And
Well, lighting for safety.
And although that's only suggestion, not part of the
Mhm.
regs, I would ask them to consider additional lighting, but not require the additional adequate. How about additional lighting as recommended by EBH for that one area of the park? Did you get that, Angela?
Want to reread it now?
Heischman moved to approve the conditional use permit and grant and approve the gravel parking lot as requested and ask board to consider additional lighting as recommended by EPH for the parking area.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jerry Dieter. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I would, except I thought our city guys would know nothing, what kind of light we
To make it safe?
need. Yeah.
Well, I think the engineer probably would know better, but then they could sure give a big hint as to what kind of wattage and so forth, so
Would
it
you
probably
like
won't
to
be a
say
big deal.
EBH or city crews?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm flexible
I'm
with
sure
the
the city could
recommendation.
tell what they should. put up there. Then you have
If it
to-
does, I don't put up the bigger one.
Yeah. As long as Jerry will concur with
Yeah,
my
that's fine.
amended motion.
Got that? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
So that may not get the best snow review.
For a
May
while.
not have to park, may not want people parking there when it's real snow.
For a while. There'll be early parking in there.
Congratulations, I'm excited for your project.
Are there handicap parking places that will be along this one right away? I would keep them in the front if I were you, and
So,
that way you would know that you're going to have a safe entrance. Okay.
Madam Mayor, while we're still on this, Doug, is that, since this is part of the city project, when we go look at our street projects in the area that we're redoing, would this be, what do they consider that, an option to pave that if we're within budget, and that would be something we could consider?
We'll have to review the bond documentation on what actually the scope of the work was originally intended, but there's a good possibility it would also actuate other ancillary features to paving, and we'd already be mobilized because we have those crews in the city, so yes.
But
So
you
no
would have to be-
promises, but maybe we can get that worked in, and if estimates come in under, we might be able to add that, so.
But you want a good base under there too,
Oh, yeah.
if time allows. Thank you, Ms. Margot. And you're going to take part in the next one too, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere yet. The next one is the changes made to the subdivision regulations. And did you all get a list of those?
Absolutely not. Are we going to?
Well, you can pass this around. It's simply typos. It is simply typos. Yeah. There's nothing that changes the meaning of anything.
Could we get this copied and then maybe consider this down?
If I'd have known I was supposed to do this, I would have brought you a copy. I'm sorry.
I know that.
So, do you need to approve tonight, or?
They can get started on their next project if they want to, without this approval.
Well, I would,
Yeah, I don't
well,
think
rather than to waste your time, I mean, it's probably not a big deal, and I would probably could feel comfortable passing it, but if they don't need to have it passed, let's just table that part. We'll get those out of the way at the next meeting, and they can start working on other
Would you mind,
recommendations.
Okay.
And it was just all typo errors in the.
I move to table the planning commission zoning regulation changes until the next meeting.
Subdivision
I'll
regulations.
second that.
Subdivision. Yeah.
Will someone need to come back and?
Chad can come back.
So
Okay.
somebody could- if it's
Chad
If
will
it's
be
just-
reminded.
those
Yes.
grammatical or, I wouldn't waste your time. But if there's other things that are substantive, which you said they're not, I don't know why we have to have somebody here.
Well, Chad, we can ask Chad if he wants to be here again.
Yeah,
Planning Commission may very well be here at the next council. No, they won't.
no, it's right after
Right
this
after.
meeting, isn't it? Right after.
But it would be convenient enough if it need be. And I'll check, and if he wants me here, I'll ask Chad if he can do it, or I'll do it.
I seconded that motion. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
Thank
Motion
you.
carried 5-0.
Yes, the 27th Memorial Day,
Yeah, I'll make an announcement.
so it'll be the same night as the convention.
Number 7.
Well, a couple weeks ago, we were here and presented the plans for the addition. You guys looked that over. Tonight, I'm here to ask, a lot of what I was going to talk to you about, we've already discussed, was the parking lot and you guys offering to maybe help us in the future. I'm here then to ask if you would approve to waive the building permit fee and also the sewer and water tap charge for the new addition. and ask that the city crews be allowed to install lines for sewer and water.
Have you got all of those added up?
Have it done in what way?
What all of those fees that he wants to be?
We talked briefly about it. The water and sewer tap fees are really designed to help offset any additional costs associated with volume or extra load on our system. Because it is an ancillary structure in the building, because it is a small restroom facility, there is no wash machine, showers, it's not like a residential. As far as the actual taxing of our system, there's very little associated with this building. And so I had made the recommendation, or we had talked about the potential for the council to consider just waiving those fees. It's $300 for water and $400 for sewer. As far as the crews installing, we have in past maintenance issues, because it is a city property, we have done the work on that. We have tied into the sewer and corrected the sewer line. And I think it's something that the library is using donated funds that are basically going to be building on city property and dedicating to us a building that's well over worth $100,000, provides additional service areas to our community, and my recommendation would be that we could probably put it in much cheaper than any contractor, and since it is a city property when it's all said and done, my recommendation would say we would definitely try to work to put that in as cost effectively as possible with city crew, and the cost associated with that would be relatively negligible.
Guess I should ask that after the public. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any action to be taken without any further discussion? Before, do you want to make a motion?
I would move that we waive the fees for the library construction. Now, do you want those detailed out, the tap fees, or it's going to be simple?
You'll probably be deciding as to whether our crew can do it ourselves too, and then there'll be.
But even if the crews can't, again, it's your argument, it's our property, why charge ourselves for these fees? So if you have to find somebody else to install, that's another issue, but as far as the fee part, I'm okay with waiving. So, did you got that motion?
I put that you move that the building permit and tap fees be waived.
Is there,
And the city crews will cooperate in trying to install whatever is
Whatever's.
logical.
is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jerry Klein. Any further discussion? All those in-
Electrical.
The question is electrical. In any installation, the electricity is brought to the building, to the weatherhead with the appropriate transformer, so that's always included.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Great.
And thank you, Janet, for some more good work. Number 8.
Get out before I get out.
Okay, if you do, some of you want to excuse yourself now. I will wait then for.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you so much for allowing me on your agenda today. I'm going to be very brief. Dr. Barnes could not attend the meeting today. He had a conflict arise at K-State. And, excuse me, wanted to personally invite you to the June 4th elected officials, general public information meeting pertaining to the Marion Reservoir. This is something we used to do quite often when we were going through the first pains of blue-green algae back in 2003 through 2007, when we actually had more significant blooms than we have now, and the reservoir and the coves were actually looked like green paint. So we thought it was a good time to bring you up to date to exactly what RAPS has been doing out there. The meeting is scheduled for June the 4th. And I brought some additional information beside what was in your packet today, which had the letter and the draft agenda, just for your information. The back page on the draft where it talks about the work group, that is the Kansas Department of Health and Environment work group and Kansas Water Office. We just received approval of a 3-year grant that will begin July 1st of 2013. The amount of the total grant will be right at $500,000 for the next 3 years. It will continue our work within the watershed to improve water quality as a public water source and recreational value. I also thought you might be interested on how much money RAPS has brought into the county through the RAPS program. It's your next page where it says Grant BMP and in kind. RAPS began, it wasn't called RAPS at the time, back in 2002 and 2003. It was actually called a 319 Non-Point Source Pollution Control Project. And so it started out with myself as part-time coordinator, and we proceeded through the years with perpetual grants. You see where our grants overlap from once we receive a grant, it doesn't end before we receive another grant. And so over the years, actually 10 years, including the $500,000 that will be in the next 3 years from 2013 to 2016, total of $1,333,802. We have to match any grant money that we receive with 40% in-kind match. That's cash and in-kind labor or materials or room, food, whatever it may be. We've matched that in the community with $927,541 for a total of $2,261,343 that has been spent on behalf through BMP implementation, information education, administration, these types of things for the Marion Reservoir Water Quality Program. The BMP's best management practices are conservation practices that have been implemented with the money, the funding that we receive from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, which, for your information, literally comes from the Clean Water Act through the EPA into the state of Kansas. The BMP's implemented is $534,522. As you see, we have approximately $185,000 of that monies on the new grants that will be going in for BMP implementation. Possibly there will be some additional funding. This does not take into consideration any funding through the Department of Conservation, formerly known as the State Conservation Commission, nor does it take in any USDA Farm Bill activities. We cannot match federal dollars with federal dollars. So therefore, it's only through the RAPS project that you see that contribution to the watershed. The BMP in kind that you see is what the producers themselves have paid to have these BMPs implemented on their ground. We, through the RAPS program, through the Marion County Conservation District, when it first started, set a policy for BMP implementation that there would never be 100% implementation cost share for any one particular project. We only had one instance where that occurred, and that was on a stream bank project in the city of Durham. And it just so happened there was a young couple. Division of Conservation actually provided most of the funding. Marion RAPS did come in and pick up the cost that was not covered by the Division of Conservation on that particular site. But the in-kind is $622,641, and that's out of the pocket of the agricultural producers out there. The county's contribution through the program is in the total in-kind budget that you see right next to the column with the grant totals. So it's been, a very significant, very valuable, if you ask my opinion, project through the years. We've accomplished a lot. We've actually reduced the nutrient load, the phosphorus and nitrogen that have been going into the reservoir all these years. If you come to the meeting on June the 4th, you're going to learn more about just exactly what our plans are for the future. We have to work under a 9-element plan, which is required by EPA for us to be able to even submit an application for additional funding. And Marion has an approved 9-element plan for the next 25 years. Doesn't mean it can't be changed. It's going to be an active plan. It's not going to be one to sit on the shelf and gather dust. So we're looking at possible adding additional target areas, if you will. We have to work within certain target areas, not the entire watershed as we did in the beginning at this point in time. And we're going to be also looking at possible change in BMP implementation. We had to state specifically in that plan what we were wanting to implement within the next 25 years. It's limiting our ability to really work with producers, is what we're finding. And so now that it's in place, we're wanting to amend it. So that'll be discussed at that June 4th meeting. On the very back page are some of the implementation, not some, the implementation of BMPs. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think you can see that there's some significant work out there. In terraces alone, we have implemented 553,474 linear feet, or a total of 104 miles and 104.82 miles of just terraces alone in that 200 square mile watershed. We have done fence and tank and pond and tank to remove cattle from streams. Right now, with the drought that we've been having for the past few years, we're seeing a lot of requests for alternative water sources, which is one of our active BMPs. That will again help with the water quality, not for your public water sources for us Muddy Creek, because that's under the Cottonwood routes, but it will help with the nutrients entering the Marion Reservoir for your water treatment facility in reducing the nutrient load considerably. Again, you can just read through there. We have done shoreline buffers with the cooperation of Kansas Wildlife and Parks. We're wanting to do more, but again, that area has to be, we have to do an amendment to add that area immediately around the lake as part of our target area. We've done 3 stream bank restorations, and that was after a 2-year study showed that stream banks really were not an avenue of nutrients or sediment even entering the reservoir, that it was primarily coming from impermeable gullies and so forth within the cropland primarily. We do have some rangeland gullies also that we are working with, where we're coming in with paddock range feeding and also that we're not overgrazing the pastures. So there's a lot of work that's going on. This is your opportunity also to talk directly with the experts, if you will, those that control the funds coming down, what we have to comply with. And I encourage all of you to be there. I really do. And I want to personally, no, there you are. I want to personally thank Margot. I called her to see if I could lease or rent the ballroom. And the community is very graciously allowing Marion Rapp's project to hold this meeting in your ballroom at no charge. I can use that as in kind. And then I also, she recommended I talk with, and I'm not sure of your organization's title, Marion Economic.
Well, which one? I mean, yeah, which one?
Marion Economic
Development.
Okay. And she suggested I call Mr. Highschmidt, Council Member Highschmidt, and talk with him. And he very graciously gave me names of people he thought would be interested in sponsoring the organization, the meeting. So you're not going to have to pay for your meal or anything of that nature. I would recommend, if you see in your time schedule you cannot make the tour or the meal, that you come at any time during the whole meeting, because at some point there will be information provided that you will find, I think, very valuable for knowing what really is happening to your public water source. So I thank you very much. It's been successful so far. So, I'm sorry.
Now, how are we going to be taking the tour? On our bus?
Well, it depends if the Marion County Economic Development bus is available. I will take that bus, or we may go through the school district. We have used a school bus before to conduct a tour several years. Excuse me, several years ago. So it's something that.
That'll be good.
Yeah. So, don't get your hair fixed, Mary, right before the
tour,
because the chicken can blow.
I already learned that lesson.
And also, I think you would like to know that Marion Reservoir Rafts is going through a transition at this point in time with a sponsoring organization. We have a 34-member stakeholder leadership team that oversees the actual activities, approves the grant budgets, works locally with myself as coordinator. But we have, in addition to what we call SLT, we have a sponsoring organization, which has been the Flint Hills Resource Conservation and Development Council, located in Emporia. Marion County has been a member of that council I think since the beginning, since it was first begun back in the 1970s. They are no longer interested in sponsoring those new grants because they feel there's not enough administration money in the grants for their ability to continue with the work that's required for a sponsoring organization. We'll be meeting on May the 21st at an SLT in Durham at Main Street Cafe to discuss who the new sponsoring organization will be, and the SLT, the stakeholder leadership team, local people, 34 member, will make the determination of who will be sponsoring the Marion RAPS project. I can tell you at this point in time, those 4 organizations are the Tallgrass Legacy Alliance, located offices in Americus, the Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams, located in Topeka, the Kansas State University, who currently is working with the Cottonwood River RAPS project, which directly affects you with the TMDL on Lead Creek, then the Marion County Conservation District. And so those are the 4 that will be interested in becoming the sponsoring organization. Primarily, the sponsoring organization acts only as like a bank, if you will. They take the funds in from the grants, they distribute the funds on a monthly basis as we present the expenses to them. And but the local SLT actually is the one that oversees the entire project. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you there at the meeting. And if you ever have any questions, please give me a call. I'm in my office most of the time. Margot will be taking reservations as well as myself. Any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
I mean, just to kind of sum it up, what would you say the biggest help that's been that we've progressed is probably putting more grass out there?
Buffers are an extremely important and very economical way to control sediment and nutrients. It's just that with the prices of grain today, most farmers want to plant from field line to ditch. And so you're not seeing much interest at all in buffers at all. We did have a buffer coordinator in Marion County. We no longer have one, and I just found out Friday night that the buffer program through the state has been totally canceled, really.
Oh.
And so the coordinator portion. Now, I'm not sure about the DOC, the Division of Conservation, whether they will continue to pay as they have like men through the continuous CRP program. I'm not aware. I don't know.
They probably won't.
Probably not. So my work does involve a lot with the Neosho Basin. I am vice chair of the Neosho River Basin Advisory Committee. I also serve as the appointed Kansas Commissioner on the Arkansas River. It's the Kansas-Oklahoma-Arkansas River Compact. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you for an informative presentation.
You're welcome.
And
come with Mary anytime to the SLT meeting. I provide your meal at that meeting also.
it's very informative. I go to 2 of them, you know.
Yes, I do know. And appreciate it.
Okay, let's 5:30, and I see we still have some good business on the agenda, and I think there's some people in our midst that wants to have it, but I would like to call it a 5-minute recess at this time, and come back in 5 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
We'll have 2 council persons that will be entering the room shortly, I hope. And I had the item of consent agenda removed, which was the approval of the beer license for the Chingawassa Group. And I would like to tell you that I did get some objections to that beer garden after we had passed the first thing, so I did want to mention that that was mentioned after we had agreed to allow them to do that. And then they also, some of them encouraged there be sufficient police security at the time, and I informed them that you were taking care of that. And there was a, let's see, and I asked if there had been any review of the agreement with the Chingawassa Group, and if there would be any need for changes, since we were allowing this group to have this beer garden. And have you reviewed that at this time?
I was kind of making sure that we got everything through and they were approved, and then we'll review it next year to see if there's any changes necessary.
That as to how we would need to reword it so that this might be included?
It's worded pretty generic, but we can review it after we know that it's all been approved and they're going to actually participate in this.
Okay, so that's what I was wanting to make sure, that we were going to have ways to approve our, that agreement if we did allow them to have the beer license. And that was the only things that I did want to inform the public that I did hear their concerns, and we would be acting accordingly. Did anyone else have to speak at this time?
Yeah, I had questions as well, but I think at one of their meetings where actually the police chief talked about his security measures, and I mentioned those to folks, they seemed very satisfied with how it was going to be handled. But I didn't hear any objections, but just questions and concerns that would be handled right.
Well, some of them, they just objected it because it was a family event. I guess I didn't put that. But I wanted them to know that I had informed the council that their needs were, or their concerns were being told. So that being said, I will go ahead and vote to approve this license. Is there a second for the Chingawassa Group?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. That has to be on display.
Posted conspicuously at all times.
Okay, let's go on to number 10.
10.
And I had asked for the discussion of the alley, since I had seen we had a discussion of the alley entrance, and we have not discussed anything about what we're going to be doing this year, and then to what plans you're making for the alley that it's in prioritized first, and then whether this could be included at the time or whatever. So how are you handling this?
Well, the council has obviously prioritized the 300 block of the alley, which is just the next block over. There's also been some concerns about the entrance on the 200 block, and it's up to the council to decide how they want to proceed. Obviously, if you say proceed as funds become available under whatever scope that may be, then we will look at that. There's a potential we could look once again at our street improvement project and see if that could fall under our bonding authority. We could look at our capital improvement budget. Quite frankly, we've had a few expenditures in 2013 that we've used some of our funds for. We do anticipate trying to get another alley done in 2013. I just need to know what the council's scope, what they wish to include in that scope, and we will begin looking for the funds and seeing what the best way is to finance any improvements.
Well, I definitely, as I prioritize this, or ask for the prioritizing to be changed, would not change my decision as to have the block that we prioritize second. And I don't know, and I would like to see that this is done pretty soon, as to what you think you might have funds you will have available for that.
And perhaps if it's okay with the council, then we could also include number 11 in that, because if we do want to try to make some sort of comprehensive plan that addresses both those issues, I think that may be a discussion also necessary. So,
well, the entrance is the main purpose.
It's just the east entrance on that block.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, and I've got a memo I put together with a picture. I don't know if we're already ready for that, but since we're talking about that, I don't disagree with you, Mayor, on the priority for the full alley, but here's something that really concerned me, and I happen to be walking down the street and took a picture of it, the entrance there on the other side, which actually affected the 200 block. There was a delivery truck that got stuck. As I circled that there, you can see the back end of the truck got high centered or stuck on the sidewalk and alley entrance there when it was coming out of the alley, which ended up blocking the other alley entrance. So Marion National was blocked, and then we had the city payloader there trying to help unstick this delivery truck. But I think that area, if we can include it with the other alley, like I said, we prioritize that, but I think this is enough of an issue that if we can fix that area right there, that would take care of this and how we can proceed.
Well, we might see what the cost is on that one at the same time we do the others, what I was thinking.
That same day, actually, Darren Neufeld had stopped, and I showed him that, and he looked at that, and he gave me some rough estimates on that, but we wouldn't have to go back very far to change the grade on that, and also catch where that, if you go back just a little bit, it'll take care of the utility where the hotel, the Elgin Hotel, had cut through there. So by changing the grade, we could fix this problem from happening on delivery trucks and repair the utility hookup there at the hotel. But I'd be in favor of the council or the staff looking at getting bids to redo the alley in the second 100 block plus the entrance on the 300 block.
Well, I would not be in favor of that because I would like to see that whole alley, what it's going to take to fix that alley behind that I had prioritized. Because the whole alley.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said just the entrances, the two entrances.
No, the whole alley.
Wait a minute, I'll listen to him. The whole alley.
No, Madam Mayor, my motion would be to do the full 200 block.
300.
I'm sorry, the full 300 block alley, and then the entrance right here, this east entrance.
Okay, so
on the
both
two.
entrances,
No, just the east entrance.
both
So-
entrances on the east side of each one of those alleys are the worst, I would say.
Well,
And then,
well, if you want to add
and
that,
then that, the one on the, yeah, the west side, with on that one as the entrance for the Marion thing, so that probably was not going to be,
That one
will
is-
be right there by the bank. That will probably not have to be much done to that one. But the rest of the alley,
Right.
The whole alley plus the east entrance. And then you have
and then
the
there's some
west
drainage
entrance.
issues down there at that east end, so you do remember that, at the east end. Drainage issues at the east end of that alley where it comes around that place where it goes out into the street.
Right, yeah. I mean,
That's included.
if I understand correctly, we're talking about the alley between 3rd and 4th Street,
With those,
fully engineered to accommodate for any concerns we may have for drainage, but as part of that, also including the alley west of 3rd Street and just south of the Elgin to correct the slope and the elevation so that we don't have to continue to rescue vehicles that get hung up on that. I did talk to Marty Frederickson, and was not aware of this, but even our own trash truck cannot negotiate that. We actually pull up from the west, dump all of our trash, and we back down the alley again because we get hung up on that intersection. So
but he's learned how to negotiate it.
I consider it a real safety issue when you have unnecessary backing of a large trash truck down an alleyway. I would prefer that
Well,
that
he
be
does it
fixed.
and then streets too, so let's make sure that he takes that in consideration too, is to backing down some of the streets because he does do that in my neighborhood, so maybe I need to talk to you about that.
We back down to Augie's alley where you live. You know, there's quite a few places.
As long as that beeper's going, we know it's coming back.
So, that part of it, I wasn't too sure that was it. Okay.
So
Just
do you
as long
understand
as,
my-
yes,
my
I do,
motion?
I do understand it, but I do not want to take away from what I am prioritizing as to being
You
first.
didn't, we did as a council.
Okay. And so you are now so ordered to
No,
start,
we haven't
so
had a
ordered
second.
to be thinking about that particular, how much that money is going to be cost.
Madam
Correct?
Mayor, the point of order. I just have a motion, there's no second. We haven't
Okay,
voted
oh,
on
excuse me,
anything.
did you make it a motion?
Yes, yes, I did.
All right. And is there a second?
I would second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded then, and then is there any further discussion, sir?
You mentioned one thing. You got one have to have engineering.
Check into it.
You mean this? Then-
Well, it would have to be on the other alley, so they would probably do something to make sure to get the right slope on that entrance. I mean, I guess the engineering is understood, but would you like me to restate that?
Well, yeah,
Because I think that, to me, that's part of the project, to have it, well, maybe Davey Head could, or whoever would get it could engineer it enough that
So in other words, not.
don't hire EBH to do it.
Well, he could find out some of our cost estimates here. I was still thinking about that as well, so.
Just to keep our costs low. It wasn't included in my motion, but
I didn't. Okay.
I guess maybe I assumed that we would do it right, but if a contractor can lay it out correctly, then, I don't know, that what they,
Alleys typically are designed to drain down the center of the alleyway, and the center of the alleyway, east to west, would be your high point. So you try to have the alleys drain from the center of the block out to the streets. That's pretty standard design. With our laser levels and our contractors and Davy's experience, not that we're choosing him, but we do have competent contractors in the area that could handle making sure that those elevations are correct. We won't put it in so that there's a huge swimming pool in the middle of the block.
I know when we put in our new parking lot, Mr. Het had that contract, but he also had Darren from EBH over there.
It was his choice to do that.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't hire him, so.
Any further discussions? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
So that isn't deciding to do anything yet, though, right? This is the alley we're gonna do if we ever find money.
We're going to get price quotes and estimates of what it's going to take to put this alley together, and also research what funding sources we can use to actually affect the repairs.
Okay, let's go on then to number, is there any further discussion? I see Mr., do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Let's then go on to number 12 then, huh?
You have in your packets the baseball softball complex policy. What we found is that it's been very loosely run in the previous years. The monies associated with rental of the field sometimes I'm not too sure where it's all been accounted for. And we just don't, in our fee policy, we don't really have anything official, and so I would just like to once again try to nail down our policy. Really no major changes to this as far as our local hosting events, no increases in any of the fees. The major change would be if outside groups want to come in and have their field dressed and relined between games, we would actually be able to provide that service, but there will be a charge to the city, so it can be compensated for the time that our city crew member that may be handling that will be able to reimburse the city through that with their hours. So this is a request that the policy is actually approved by the council, and that is your first page. The second page is the form that will be used, and it will be modified as necessary as we go along in the project. That is the first issue of this request to the council.
So if we approve the policy, then we have to change the fee policy to get that all approved.
Just for
And it makes
continuity
sense.
of our documentation, the second feature of that would be then to amend our fee resolution to include these charges, so it is part of our official fee schedule.
So first we would do the policy, then
I would appreciate that, yes. And I will say that REC has been very helpful in drafting this. They've had full input on it, and I think we've got as much consensus as we can get on making it official.
Margot is in our audience, and so then if you have anything to add to that, I hear it at this time.
Well, I was originally asked to draft something back in
7 or 8, maybe?
I want to say even 2004 by Mr. Mayfield, and then nothing was ever done with it. And frankly, you know, we've had more things come up this year than we have in several years past. So it's time, we need something in place. I appreciate it.
Well, I did talk to their chairman, and she said it's long overdue, and also to Rodney Richmond, which neither one of them could be in attendance, so they've also said it's long overdue. So that's the input I could give you from that point.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the use policy for Marion baseball/softball complex.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that passed 5-0. Now then we will take a look at our fee resolution.
The amendments to the fee resolution is now number 13-07, and you'll see on the bottom of the first page, all fees associated with the complex policy have been added to the fee schedule.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve resolution 1307, which restates our fees for the city, which now includes the baseball, softball complex.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jerry Dieter. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Number 14.
This is simply a request for payment to EBH for the Clink project. It's part of their professional services for the time that they have worked on the Clink project, and I would recommend the council approve the request.
Do we have a motion?
I would move for the payment to EBH for the Clink project.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to pay a fee of $4,000, is this one?
That's correct.
Okay, to EBH, and is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. And after that's been done now, so does he have anything that's our calendar is moving along to now? What point?
I spoke to Mr. Neufeld today. The Clink project is basically ready to go forward. As soon as we award the bid and they are able to start taking draws for materials that the awarded contractor may have, we do necessarily want, we absolutely want to make sure that we do not start this process before Chingwassa Days. And so in effect, and that's coming up very shortly, we do anticipate after Chingwassa Days going out and doing the award and then moving within their time frame to get the Clink project done. The bid let is this week, but we don't have the approval to proceed is when we actually have to start paying for everything.
I was just going to say, isn't the bid there?
Yeah, Thursday at 2 on it.
So, that's what I want to hear you say anyway. Okay, let's go then on to number 15.
We also have an invoice from EVH for work done on the Jex Sewer project. The invoice is in the amount of $8,000. Before we are able to pay that, we do need approval to request funds from the sewer project loan fund.
I would so move this be approved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. And
When
do
will
you
they
need that?
start that,
The Jex,
Yeah.
there's two kind of roadblocks we have to go through. One is the state has awarded the CDBG, but they're not too sure how they're going to pay for it yet. And so we have to wait until July 1st, June?
The new year.
July 1st for fiscal year 14 for the state of Kansas, so that they can actually assure us they have the funds for funding this project. The other roadblock right now, but it's in order, is the actual sewer lift station. There's a new lift station that's going to be placed, and it is on order, and we need to still know what that delivery time is, because we're going to start there so we know what we're going to drain into and pump out as we work from that point.
Any other questions for that project? Okay, then let's move on then to, let's see, we're down to number 16.
Each year, we are required to come to the council to request approval to offer Chingawassa buttons to the full-time employees. This is considered an employee benefit, that's why we have to come back to you each year. Last year, the council did approve all full-time employees, including the police department. If you chose to do that again, it would be 25 employees at $23 a button.
25 times 25?
25 times
23. I would move that we continue to do this as a gesture of appreciation for their work as well. So, is there a second?
I'm second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. 5-0.
At the last city council meeting, I was directed to recontact the 3 local banks to get quotes for the refinancing of the 828 North Roosevelt, which is formerly Arley's. You do have a summary of that. The 2 quotes that we did receive, Marion National Bank decided not to participate, and the council, if they are interested, needs to, 1, decide which payment year option you wish to choose and which financial institution you wish to utilize.
Well, there are 15 and 20-year options there, correct?
That is
We
correct.
do that. So I would like to just discuss that a little bit first, and then go with what we would want to do. And then you would know that for sure.
This would be a very easy decision if we had a date in which we sold the building. Because we don't have that date in which to sell the building, it becomes pretty much whatever your desires are. If we were to think we were going to get rid of the building in less than a year, the Tampa State Bank is a little better option just because they don't have the origination fees as high. At the same time, does the council assume that this will be something that we can get moved within a year? If not, then obviously the interest rate will actually offset any origination costs, and the Central National Bank option is better. So that's the first analysis. The second analysis is how long do you want to hold on to it. If the idea is to keep our monthly expenditures down and we're not as worried about knocking down principal, then obviously you can see that we're saving $300 or so every month by going with a 20-year amortization. The 20-year amortization, conversely, will not knock down our principal, and so if we hold it for 3 years, there'll be more we have to pay off than if we have a 15-year. From a personal standpoint, I like to keep my amortization schedules as short as possible. And the 15-year amortization on the lower interest rate from Central National Bank is approximately $300 more than we've been paying on our current. The 20-year amortization is approximately exactly what we're paying on a monthly basis. So it really becomes up to the council which way you want to go. There's probably not a right or wrong.
Okay, but have you started using, contacting that regional person that might?
Yes, I've got, I'm narrowing it down. I think we're going to be looking at Landmark, and I'll be getting in contact with them this week.
Because I'd sure like to get that on the market with them as soon as possible. I don't know how the rest of it would feel, but I'd like to see it get out there and get advertised.
Is there a pre-penalty for early payment?
Neither institution has any prepayment penalty on the mortgage, on the lease purchase.
So if you sell it 2 years, you just...
Right, at any given time in which a normal monthly payment is due, if we decide to buy it or off, we would just take the outstanding principal balance plus any accrued interest and make that payment.
Further questions? Action?
We gotta do something.
That's for sure. We're getting June 1st. I don't think we're probably going to have, you don't have anybody lined up right now, beating at your door.
Unfortunately, not yet, but I
You're working.
keep working at it.
Okay. Now, it looks to me like the orientation fee you said was just a one-time.
That's right.
Need a case.
Origination.
Origination, excuse me. So that was one of the questions I had asked. Did 15 or 20, that's, is it just a matter of throwing it up in the air?
I would say if we want to be aggressive on moving this, I want to get this thing moved.
That's
So the principal pay down is not as critical as keeping your monthly expenditures reasonable. Also, if you ever wanted to try to tie a new tenant into a monthly payment that more closely resembles what we're paying, then once again, the 20-year amortization gives you a little bit more of a one-for-one potential for your releasing it. So I could be wrong. My gut says that the 20-year amortization is probably the better with our current cash flow situation. And if we can get it moved, the amount of principal we're paying down in the first year is negligible anyway on either amortization schedule.
Concur. Then I would so move that we go with Central National Bank for the 20-year. Is there a second?
Second.
Second to Jerry Dieter. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. And we have
One abstention.
one extension. So, that takes care of that, what you need to know.
Yep, thank you.
Number 18.
I was approached by the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America chapter of Marion High School. They are wanting to participate in a Safe Kids type child safety initiative, and the program they've identified is a group called the Community Safety Net. I did have a representative of the Community Safety Net come to my office, and he did show some examples of the safety equipment that is, or safety materials that are provided, a DVD, a pamphlet. Unfortunately, did not have extras in which I could present to the council. So after he had left, I went to their website, and I did not proceed any further because we have virus blocking software that alerted that there might be a problem. That is not to be a reflection necessarily upon the organization. but I didn't want anybody of the council trying to go on, because if you don't have virus blocking software, if that website had been hacked, if there was a problem, I didn't want anybody else getting infected. So I'm not trying to make a commentation or
Do you think they ought to be notified that that happened? That this organization may be?
they could, yeah. Yeah,
Because
and I
it
have
may
not,
be-
yeah. And it may be wholly innocent on their part.
Right.
But that caused me to do a little more research, and so in my memo, I did mention that I contacted the Council Grove Fire Department. They were mentioned on their Facebook page. The Community Safety Net does have a Facebook page. It is updated. It does have a lot of activity on it. And it appears as though they do this service throughout primarily the upper Midwest. But I thought since it was Council Grove, I'd be kind of curious, so I called the fire chief, and he was very pleased with the materials and thought that it was a good program. Again, this is something that we do not have budgeted, and you can see the different levels of participation as far as their levels of support. I asked Ms. Billings if she wanted me to bring this before the council, and she was saying yes, but she was not able to be here tonight. So I am presenting it to the council to just...
So what, they're given a what?
The 4th and 5th graders are given a packet that includes a brochure that includes fire safety, gun safety, tornado, inclement weather, things that they could do that they bring back to their homes and try to encourage safety activities within their homes. So
I had this company come to my business.
Did you?
I've seen the material.
You think the kids will use it?
Have you looked at any of it? Have you
He
seen
came by my office too.
personally, it's not the devil most important.
Well, we have, the trouble is, my feeling is this is a priority that needs to be taken care of by the parents themselves. And so, and then, or he comes with that recommendation that we need it, and it's something that we could afford.
Well, we have a Dragnet program, you know, that Deputy McCarty and Mike Stone help teach those kids. So
The fire department goes up there every year during Fire
Yeah.
Safety Week. I mean, we are represented in the community with a lot of these same activities, so.
So do we have any action to be taken?
Mayor, I have a question. Do we know how many 4th and 5th graders that you need supplies for?
they're estimating 85.
Okay. And were you told how many sponsors they already have in the
To
community?
the best of my knowledge, he had not procured any sponsorship yet.
Do we have any action? Do we have any action? Hearing none, we'll go on to our next item.
In your package, you have a job description for the part-time cemetery sexton position. This is a summer position that we've had every year. It's just that when we were doing the updates, we didn't have this one included. So I thought since we've started with the summer going, it's probably a good time to go ahead and get this job description updated. This has been reviewed by the street supervisor, utility supervisor.
Yeah,
And the city
utilities,
administrator.
and that being said, is the going out and the trimming of the trees and the high lines and so forth, part of that duty is the reason he's being used as the supervisor?
It does say that there includes the assist electrical department with tree trimming and placement of utility poles. I don't see them doing a lot of utility pole placement, probably
Like
more
I said,
tree
trimming
trimming
the
around
trees
the
and that type of
cemetery.
thing happen with that
And
project?
they have no supervisorial experience or responsibilities.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you got that they would be under their supervision. And I just said, I thought maybe they should be under both of those supervisors, a street, Marty, and both, Christian.
Well, Marty's position is the utility supervisor.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Well, I thought he was the street and just the street and alley.
He was, we kind of attempted to combine all of his titles into
Okay.
one.
When you approved his work, his job description, it actually shows him
Look at that.
the umbrella of the utilities.
Okay, and that being said, that's the main thing I have seen, that, and he has already been employed, correct?
Yes, his position started last Monday.
And it's a summer job?
It's a seasonal part-time.
And that would be at what
And-
cost?
Um,
It's not neither here nor there, but I am kind of curious. Maybe I'll want to apply for it.
$8.
How much?
$8.
My question, if this is a part-time position and then in a summer, when you talk summer, haven't we had high schoolers or those over 16 that not, this says may possess a valid Kansas commercial driver's license or CDL. Is that you're
It's a
requiring a
may.
CDL?
It's a may.
Okay.
But if they don't, you don't let them use it, correct?
No, if you don't have a CDL, you can't drive a CDL qualified vehicle.
Okay. I mean,
And what kind of machines they need to
And
use
you
them?
typically are thinking maybe it is older youth jobs. What we've found is that it's not. It's usually middle-aged
okay.
that we see coming in.
Part-time, okay. I just, well, you said high school diploma or GED, so it's not 16 months.
Right.
Can handle these particular things. Any other questions? Action?
I move to approve the part-time cemetery sexton job description.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the part-time cemetery sexton's position. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Department heads, Mrs. Marty has.
If you have any questions on their work orders, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I see they had some, they're doing some different kind of work here.
Something a little out of the ordinary is that the county commission allowed the city of Marion to reclaim the ballistic panels and glass at the old county jail. And so you will see that the latter half of last week, there was some assistance provided tearing that out with the intent, and I don't know if Tyler's going to say anything, but the intent to put it into the police department, we felt as though in this day and age, it's never a bad thing to have a little extra protection, and since it's also our juvenile take-in center, we feel as though with free materials, it really is a very low cost for us to add additional security to our police department. It will be placed in the police department entryway.
And they've been out at the airport, and I think, do I hear some airplanes that might be using the airplane?
The airport is being used quite heavily right now by both the Cooperative Grain and Supply as well as Ag Services. We've got both entities out there, and there is compensation to the airport that we do put back into the repair and maintenance budget line item.
What do we get?
It's kind of based upon somebody, I think it's 10 cents an acre applied. Last year it was just Ag Services, and I think the check received was around $2,200 for the services of the airport.
Do they put in their own water and they service their plane to go up, take off every
At this point, they've brought their own water in. We have given them the option, but it's actually Marion County Rural Water District, or District Number 2, that serves the lake. And it's really an agreement that they may work out with Water Improvement District Number 2 as far as pulling from the fire hydrant at the airport.
You didn't see any increase there, did you, as far as the...
Well, since they've just started, we won't see anything
Okay.
in the next month.
Any other questions? You did tell me about a problem with 04 dump truck,
The bucket truck.
the bucket truck, excuse me.
Yeah, we're having some continuing maintenance issues with E3, which is the 2004 older bucket truck. And we're right now looking at potential options of what is the most economical way to address that. And there will be additional information provided to the council at a later date.
Thank you. They wanted to make them aware. I knew that was secret. All right, how about the chief? Do you have something for us?
I have nothing further to add unless you all have any questions.
I like the way you are adding these little things here at the end. I think it's kind of interesting to know that where it happens, and I do know that you do take care of houses, so thank you. Any further questions for the chief?
Nope.
Okay, how about Miss Angela?
I have nothing to report.
Except that we'll be having our meeting next time at a different day.
The next council meeting will be held on Tuesday instead of Monday. And there will also be a planning commission meeting following the council.
It was,
There will be a planning commission meeting that same night.
okay. And that's isn't that to
Because of the-
planning, is that a hearing?
Yeah, there's a public hearing
There's a public hearing. That's my dad.
on the public restrooms in the park.
So are we going to have any,
Okay, the Tuesday the 28th is going to be a very full day. In your package, you also received the invitation by the county commission to have a countywide meeting concerning the potential for, word just escapes me.
Recycling?
Recycling. I started with an R. To do the recycling, and that's at 10 a.m. And because it's a public meeting on behalf of the county commission, there will be, obviously it's an open meeting, but there is no official meeting of the city council. There is no prohibition of the members of the council, more than 3 or a quorum being at the county meeting. And any council member is free to put their own personal suggestions or comments at the county's meeting. However, I just caution the council that there would not be any decision-making, any implication that there's a decision on behalf of the city and the city council at that time. So just want to make sure that everything's copacetic with Kansas Open Meetings Act, but you're all invited to attend. As mentioned, 28th will be the Tuesday night at 4:30 will be the council meeting because we're moving it Memorial Day as Monday night. And then also Planning Commission starts at 7 that same night, and it will be a public hearing on the bathrooms in the park. Much like tonight, I had a fallback position in the commission room or in the community center, and I will do that again 2 weeks from Tuesday. So if there are a lot of people attending, we can reconvene in the community center.
did I hear anything from the planning board that they might be wanting to go down to look at that particular, I was thinking about that.
I have not heard anything concerning that. Also, I got a call this afternoon. There appears to be some confusion of the Arley's sign that is still on the city-owned building at 828 North Roosevelt, and the request was made, can it be taken down? Just to avoid any people showing up there and not knowing where Arley's is. Because it's a city building, I felt like the council needs to probably be okay with the fact that it get removed. I'll work with the previous owner. Worst case scenario, it is our building. We may have to go up there and spend half an hour taking it down just to avoid confusion, as long as that's okay with the council.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, is he in a new position?
He is in a new location on East Main, West Main.
So he maybe want to put up another sign.
You already
It is already signed.
You already asked? Okay, good. Okay. All right, David, oh, no, David. We don't have a David in here anymore. Doug, do you have any more?
I have nothing else to add unless you have any questions.
Instructions or otherwise? Okay. That being said, why we'll go to public forum if there is any public forum. Gee, we have a good forum here. Oh, we got a forum here.
At the Marion Kiwanis meeting last Tuesday, I give a program on the restrooms, the location of the restrooms and so forth. And the Marion Kiwanis Club did option to write a letter of support on the restrooms. So at this time, I would like to give you a copy of that letter.
For the location of the restroom?
For the location to be in that area and to keep the cost down by not having to use the lift station. And so
and the lift station, are they going to be able to get a cost on that, do you think?
I have been presented with one potential option for a lift station. As we get to the point where the position is located and we know exactly where it's going in, I would recommend that goes to a bid.
And we still don't have, we did not approve a building plan as such.
No, it's primarily just the concept that was advanced by the park board.
And that it'll be open year-round, and we'll be able to do that. So have you investigated any of that at all as to whether that would be an option we would have? You better not to do that?
With our discussions associated with our last meeting, it was recommended that we bring it to the planning commission. They are having a public hearing. And I'm sure at that point, if there are concerns about that, I'm basically waiting to see what the public concerns are and hear how that public hearing goes through. Based upon the majority of the decision of where it may go, once we decide where the location will be, we'll come back in and tackle what the best way is to get it implemented. There's plenty of work to do after the public hearing.
That's for sure. Anything else?
Yeah. I'll speak from the floor as a park board member. 2 weeks ago, we did make a presentation to the council, and I appreciate the public's input that we've gotten so far. Yeah, limit to me 3 minutes. I'll limit to 3 minutes. We appreciate it. I'm disappointed that there was some misinformation provided by the newspaper in there, and I've talked with them about it, and I think some of that's going to get corrected. Unfortunately, we're trying to move and make a decision, at least as location, because we're having the Clink project come up, and as far as the park board is concerned, is we'd rather not tear up Main Street after the Clink project is done. So hopefully the council, even if it can't make a decision on location, maybe they would consider stubbing in at east side of the park, west side of the park, until we can do this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of strong emotions about the restrooms, and we want to take everybody's point of view into account. We just tried to do some homework and make a presentation, and we haven't even got that far yet. But
I know you had it in 3 phases. How about the second phase and first phase being combined? Had they ever thought about just removing that and making a smaller bathroom possible and at the original location?
That was talked about a 1.5 years ago, and it was the consensus that to try and get the consensus was, well, lift station was part of it, but to get a bigger restroom. And if you were to put a bigger restroom at that location, a larger lift station would have to be put in anyways. So, and then, but we're not for sure, but probably a larger sewer line even back to Main Street in the existing location. But that's part of what the city is going to find out. The idea of moving the actual restroom somewhere else was desirable in order to put in a larger gazebo in that existing spot, larger gazebo, open all the way around so that you can actually see through it clear to the back of the park, and allow for handicap ramps to be installed there with a new gazebo design. So that was part of it. So yes, it was considered. We felt like the recommendation should be a larger restroom than what's there, but
if that answers your question. We appreciate it. We don't want to, it was never the park board's intention to say, this is our idea and you have to adopt it, period. No, we're disappointed that there was some jumping ahead of what the community thought was going to be there, or our proposal, but it's the city's park. We never intended to desecrate the beauty of the park or desecrate the memorials that are there, but we've talked about a lot of options, and we've come down to several, but it's back to the council to make that decision. So, if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Todd. Any further public forums? If not, motion for adjournment. No. Oh, that's right, we do have something else you added. We do have an executive meeting, don't we? It might be good news, hopefully.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay. All righty, we will take a 5-minute recess then, and then how many minutes do you want to have?
5 minutes.
Okay. So then.
Is that all it's going to be? I mean.
No, let's go ahead and take a 3 if you want to.
Oh, no, I'm talking about how long
Your
executive session.
It's not going to be that long, bro.
Yeah, 5 would be
You
fine.
think?
And I could probably wait.
Are you sure? Okay, then move your motion for a 5-minute executive session for non-elected personnel, economic and personnel, tourism position, including the council and the city administrator. Is there a second?
No second.
Any further discussion? All those, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Is there going to be action?
No.
Okay.